So I'm Subhash Walimbe. I'm going to talk about the human skeletons that are recovered from the Harappan context. I remember some 4 years back, we had a meeting here in IIT when I also talked almost on the same subject. So I was thinking, what exactly new I am going to say here. See, after my retirement, to put it very frankly, after my retirement, I had nothing else to do. So when I reading this question, this Harappan skeletal business, when I was in this business, there were many puzzles, many questions, and I wasn't able to answer them neatly to myself. So during the last 4 or 5 years, what I did is I uh, tried to see actual specimens which they are working on. I try to talk with those people directly face to face to I ask them questions and I try to seek answers for my doubts. I try to read the literature published in the subject and I try to talk to some my archaeological friends. But still there are many puzzles, many concerns to me. So I thought I should discuss those my puzzles, my questions here in this audience. Rather, I should put it this way. I want to put my concerns on the record on this platform. And this is how there are some 31 slides, I think. I will have to skip some slides because I want to fit myself in 20 minutes time slot. So you already know about the important sites that are that give us human burials. Now, before 1980, what kind of research they were doing on skeletons? See, most of the research that was done before 1980, that was focused to address the issues of taxonomical questions, to what race, to what physical type these people belong to. What exactly the foreign racial element, how to quantify it, how to qualify it. Then there was another question which were really bothering some of us, some of our forefathers, academic forefathers, is there was something like a massacre event in Mohenjodaro, and they were trying to answer that. Those questions, related questions about the massacre event, so-called massacre event. So in a way, most of the research done on Harappan skeletons that was addressed to identify the issues of population identity and concepts of Aryan invasion. When I say Aryan invasion, I will always, in writing or when speaking, I will try to put it in quotes. The two citations which I give here, Gupta and Gupta Ratna Basu, they tried to study the Harappan skeletal material, basically from R37 cemetery. And they identify the dominant racial type as Mediterranean with a mix of several other races. They called it Protoslide, Alpine, Mongoloid, etc., 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 etc. There are 5 racial types they identified. And there is one sentence in that report which I am really couldn't understand over all these years. After 40 years of my experience also, I still wasn't able to understand this question. The population, they said population was homogeneous, meaning thereby that the population at these sites belonged to a single race, but with several races with distinctive characteristics. I didn't understand this question, this sentence, why they are writing it, how they are writing it. But anyway, for this so-called racial classification, mostly they were working on the anthropometric features, measurement features, and they were trying to study the skull shape, face shape, nose shape, etc. So there are some dimensions, some indices, what we call it, indices, facial index, nasal index, facial index, etc., etc., etc. But most of the skeletons, most of the skulls in the archaeological index, we don't have facial skeleton attached in situ. So for all practical purposes, the racial classification, what they did, earlier people, my forefathers did, that was based on something called as cranial index. The cranial index is, those who are not familiar with anthropometry, cranial index is something, is a ratio of breadth to length expressed in terms of percentage. There is something called, they call that, there is some broad-headed element. Head becomes broader at the later stages of Harappan. Earlier population of Harappa was supposed to be long-headed, and this broad-headed element was taken as it was taken equated with something called as foreign phenotypic element. What they meant is some people from outside they came. They didn't, at that time they didn't call it Aryan. Over the last 30 years, we did much experimentation on the population experiencing the change from hunting-gathering economy to farming economy. And what we think is there are not only Harappa, but there are several sites in Deccan Chalcolithic where we see gradual transition from long-headedness to broad-headedness. And it is essentially related to decrease in cranial length, increase in cranial height, rotation of facial region. So earlier face was prognathous, it becomes more and more orthogonatous, it becomes more on state, but there is no substantial increase in cranial breadth. So all these changes which we notice in the agriculture transition, they are essentially because this is what we did, is our research tells us that it is essentially because of the decreased mechanical stress on the masticatory apparatus, on the teeth and jaws and all that. So the change from long-headedness to broad-headedness, from dolichocrany to mesocrany or brachycrany, is not because of increase in cranial breadth, but it is because of decrease in cranial length. And this decrease in cranial length is essentially is to be equated with the advancement of technology, changes in food pattern, type of food they were consuming, and type of food processing economy. Why it's not going? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Thank you. Now, after 1980, sorry. After 1980, we depended more on morphological traits. We thought that it is not really a good academic bargain to work only on metric traits, continuous traits. Good, let us go for some non-metric discrete traits. Now, these non-metric traits is essentially they have low susceptibility for environmental change or evolutionary change. They remain constant throughout your life. They are not age-related. There is not much of sexual dimorphism also expressed in those features. And so and most important, there is significant genetic component involved in it. So if you are comparing a population, then it is better, what we thought is better to rely on those non-metric discrete traits. So there are studies carried out. There are some other people also working on the same line. They were thinking along the same line. And you are familiar with these two citations, which are headed by Hemphill. Lucas was there. Kennedy was involved in one of these studies. And they say, they studied several features on cranium, dentition, and all that. They say that they do not support the earlier thesis of Harappan biological homogeneity. They say it's urban population. So there may be, in any urban cities, big cities, metropolitan cities, there are many people coming from different directions. So you cannot have a homogeneous population as such. People are coming from different regions, even local tribal people also entering that area. So there is some kind of heterogeneity. There is no, as which was thought of earlier, there was homogeneity, and this research contradicts it. This study also tells you about two demographic discontinuities. The first discontinuity in biological discontinuity appears in around 6,000 to 4,500 BCE, and the second discontinuity occurs in around 800 BCE. But there is no major change in biological continuity during the decline phase of Harappan culture. So this study also supports that there was no other foreign person coming here, foreign population coming here, encroaching the area and causing the changes in morphological pattern. Then there is one very important dental study undertaken by one hockey. I was partner in this study. And this study clearly tells us that the Harappan population evolved, biologically evolved from Indian Mesolithic population. And it is not because of the intrusive population or Vedic Aryan populations from the Western region. Dental data reflects underlying genetic homogeneity of the Indus people. And it tells us very important thing is Deccan Chalcolithic is not evolved from Harappans. Deccan Chalcolithic and Harappans, both of them evolved from the Mesolithic earlier. We were all Mesolithic, and evolution of Harappan culture, Harappan population and evolution of Deccan Chalcolithic population these are two different events. Now, coming to the concept of Aryan invasion, the problems, there are some archaeological dimensions of this problem, but I will focus only on the physical dimensions. There are two problems which really bother us as an anthropologist is whether there is any kind of foreign phenotypic element involved, which I answered that question, and there is something like massacre event in the later phases of Mohenjodaro. Is there any other person coming with those flat iron sword type of things, riding horse, and they kill those population? So we are trying to study the massacre event also. So there is the first question about the population continuity, which already I answered. So there was no biological, anthropological reason to believe that foreigner came and disturbed the phenotypic setup of that region. When we talk about the Aryans coming and disturbing the Harappan system, there is no anthropological support for this hypothesis. There is one in our school also. When I was in school also, I was taught that the Aryans came and they destroyed the big civilizations like Harappa, Mohenjodaro, and Dravidians were forced to move to southwards. When we South India and North India, these terms we use generally is there is a river called Narmada. Anything above Narmada, we call it, notionally we call it North India, and this is South India, South Narmada. So the Aryans came, they destroyed the cities. They were having those iron weapons, riding horse, they had mobility, they were brave, intelligent people, and they made the Aryans to come to South India. Now, when I talk as an anthropologist, a biological anthropologist with some kind of social anthropology background, I will say that biologically and sociologically, this sentence, once the cities were destroyed, the Dravidians fled to South India, to me, it appears very, very unrealistic. And normally, notionally, I mean, you will understand it, any conqueror, he will keep some of the folks behind, especially women, to work as slaves. But there is no so-called Dravidian element, Dravidian phenotypic element, Dr. Saab, in the north as of now. But the phenotype of Dravidians in South India, to us as a physical anthropologist, it appears to be a result of very, very long history of adaptation to the local climate. And of course, there is no large-scale migrations during the last 10,000 years. There can be some population movements, but there was nothing like a invasion. When we use the term invasion, it implies a very group people coming here. So there was probably some migrations related to the trade activities. Now, one thing I must admit here is process of peopling of the continent may not be fully understood by using only conventional anthropological parameters. Whatever we could do, we tried to do, but we know our answers, our conclusions are still complete, far, far less than complete. So therefore, intervention of molecular technology needs to be welcomed here. We need help of these technologies. So I tried to call many people, many friends, even our team is also, we are partner in some of our research. I talked to Stone King, I talked to David and all that. what I knew and what I could confirm from them, there are serious sampling errors. My friend, genetic friend, molecular friend, probably will object to it tomorrow. But there are serious sampling errors in molecular anthropological studies. Sampling errors, what I mean here is, let me complete this. There is anthropological, there is absolutely no point in comparing Bengalis with Maharashtrians or Bengalis with Punjabis. You have to have something called as Mendelian population when you are doing population distance studies. Endogamous, and this is particularly important for situation like us, because we follow endogamy very strictly, marriages within our group, which results in retaining the genetic capital within a specified framework. So in this background, I must say, any hypothesis on ancestral North Indians or ancestral South Indians, or the notion of racial purity of Indians, which was coined by some of us, we need to take these terms very, very seriously. We need to have some special debate on this specific issue. No comment, no undebatable statement on population of this region can be forwarded unless we have high quality ancient DNA data. And this appears, the chances of having this high quality of DNA data appears to be very, very dim as of now. In 2000, I wrote an article which was published in SAPA. The title of the article was "Discouraging Prospects for Ancient DNA in India." Even after 25 years, I guarantee, I bet, I asked many questions. It was confirmed by Pabo Group. It was confirmed by David Group. There is not much of improvement even after 25 years. Many people will object to it. Now, this massacre event, we don't support it anthropologically. Now, I have just 3 minutes left, so I will just keep some of these sites. Paleopathology, one very important, widely debated paleoanthropological study. This is one of the major concerns. I try to go back to the specimens tree. It is a study published by Gwen Group. Gwen, many of us know her. Published in 2001. It is really questions the image of Harappan civilization as peaceful realm. It is dramatically shattered by this study, and it hints for the interpersonal violence against women and children. Very, very serious allegations, and it is being debated very highly in paleopathological community. Well, she says that prevalence, that's why I'm quoting her, the prevalence and patterning of cranial injuries combined with striking differences in mortuary treatment. She also calls it mortuary treatment. Demography indicates that interpersonal violence in Harappan society was structured along the lines of gender and community membership. Very, very high quality, very, very debatable statement. And results contradict the humanizing, unrealistic myth of Indian civilization as an exceptionally peaceful prehistoric urban civilization. This is what she says. And I registered my protest for this statement. See, there are some problems of interpretation. I will take just 2 minutes more. There are serious problems of interpretation. First thing is there are some cranial injuries, are not many. There are some injuries on metacarpals are these bones, metacarpals or carpal bones, and they can be signs of accidental or occupational injuries. And of course, interpersonal violence, it cannot be ruled out. But if anything happens to me, I won't die. So it can't be taken as cause of death or something inhuman treatment to me. She says, I'm quoting her here, the cranial traumata presented here could be caused by interpersonal violence and or medical intervention. This is her statement. When we say medical intervention, it essentially necessarily it means a very high level of expertise. Somebody treating you when you are sick, when you are injured, when you have broken hand or leg or whatever, it implies interpersonal violence as a sporadic event. But there is a local treatment available to cure that problem. And there is a society who is willing to look after the victim. I don't know if I'm clear. And one more important thing is I try to ask many of my archaeology friends, Shinde, Nath, and several others. I mean, these are my friends, my colleagues. So this is all Area G story. I don't know. I will be very happy if any of us give me clearer idea what Area G is, what kind of dates you have. See, this is the material from where this is collected, what she is reporting here. We have mix of human and non-human bones, only cranial fragments, not bodies. Bodies are not in orientation. And this, they are found within 100 feet from the trench. The area is not very far from citadel. So to me, as a social anthropologist, as a person living in society, so would it be logical to think the unfortunates as discarded victims of an epidemic or massacre? I really don't mean they were killed or whatever, tortured or something. Probably they were epidemic, unfortunate individuals. But given the Harappan preoccupation with cleanliness and sanitation, if somebody is some warm-blooded animal dying here, the next day you just can't cross it because it smells so badly. And this area G is not very far from citadel. And you can't imagine hundreds of people decaying there. You just can't imagine that kind of situation. And more so, she also says it is not one-time event. So we have to very clearly think about it. I will leave. If there are any questions, I will be very happy to learn from you. So thank you very much. There are some 3 or 4 questions here. Just let me tell you. See, Arthur this medical text was being written during the Protestantic time. Medical research is never a part-time job. You don't do medical research for the sake of research. You need somebody to taste the medicine you are inventing. You need a patient in front of you. Unless you have a patient, you don't do medical research. So since there were problems, they were doing medical research. So could be this media G, if it is archaeological, if it is in Harappan context, it can be something like that green thing is hiding here. It can be something like an experimental area, or probably something like dispensary, some indoor facility for patients, something. It can be anything like that. So let us think about it. So thank you very much.